Hello and welcome once again to It's a Frankly Hairy podcast. Welcome to the forest here. This is your host, Frank Weber. So glad that you could join me again this week. I think I have a very entertaining show for you here. As you know, it's the very end of May where I'm batch recording some shows and talking about several different topics in each show. A few days ago, there's I don't remember what year it was. I guess it was the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500. I'm an auto racing fan. I don't watch it as much as I used to. Usually at only certain times of the year. Memorial Day weekend is one of the favorite times because you have Indy 500 and then you have the big Coca-Cola 600 NASCAR race in Charlotte. I also watched the Daytona 500 in February. But really, I don't watch it as much as I used to. I just catch snippets here and there. And I have kind of an Indy 500 related story or philosophy that I think is kind of important. But anyway, it was a really good race this year. Penske Racing's Joseph Newgarden won it again for the second year in a row. This year, it went green for the last at least 15 or 20 laps with a lot of lead changes. There wasn't really any opportunity, I don't think, for any kind of conspiracy theories or whatever on the outcome, which I kind of thought there was last year. I don't really like it when they stop a race with 3 laps to go, so just so they can finish under green. Occasionally races have to finish under caution. I don't believe in overtime and all that stuff. I'm kind of a purist. But anyway, congratulations to Joseph. He won second year in a row, had an incredible car that really helped, incredible equipment and team. Roger Penske's and his racing team is tremendous, and I still think it's a little unusual that he now owns the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and all of IRL and open wheel racing in America, but the results speak for themselves, so I can't really complain about that. I am amazed still every time about just a comment and compliment to every driver out there about the beautiful women they hang around and often marry. Joseph's wife, Ashley, was wearing this strapless thing that looked like it was going to fall off when she was jumping around in celebration. But anyway, I don't want to sound too piggish or anything on that comment. I actually have something much deeper that I wanted to discuss a little bit with you today, and a lot of it has to do, as I've gotten older, I get a new appreciation because I get a new learning about things. My learning about them gives me a new appreciation. And I've always been interested in people who think counterintuitively, but in a very workable and productive way, as opposed to not a counterintuitivity of stupid ideas, which there's a lot of nowadays, but things that actually do work in the real world and can actually be very positive for us. And so I ran across, what the hell does that mean? I don't know. Ran across a couple of clips from Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s podcast where he had 4-time Indy 500 winner Rick Mears on his show. And that guy, Rick Mears, is one hell of a conversation. I really should listen to the entire show. But he retired not too long after his last Indy 500 win, maybe a year or so after that. And I remember as a teenager hearing him on a local sports call-in show talking about how even back then, well, it's true now, that if you want to win a race, you sometimes have to slow down and obviously work with the strategy that your team has. Obviously, that's true in most American and foreign racing circuits that are not drag racing. The races are marathons, and you can't always be going full throttle, whether in your mind or in the car, because you're going to wear yourself and possibly your machinery out early if you don't kind of keep an even keel about things. And this hits home with me because I feel like I'm almost too intense and almost too overhyped about my daily life and my current work outside of the art. I'm still practicing a little bit of dentistry. I want to get out of that, but the stress and everything and the anticipatory anxiety kind of makes me go a little bit too hard and too strong, and it's just too much. And so back in the 90s, whenever that was, he was saying, you have to kind of take it a little easier, sometimes a little slower and calmly, and work with your game plan and all that, and you can find your way to the front and to victory lane, actually. And he obviously proved that, winning the Indy 500 4 times and had a chance to win a couple of others. Was really close on those. But anyway, on Dale Jr.'s podcast, I don't really want to necessarily point you to a different podcast, but he went over some more of his philosophy about just being even keel in the garage and sometimes being late to the starting grid or close to being late to the starting grid, and going in with a philosophy that even in the biggest race of the year, the greatest spectacle in racing, that he looked at it as just another race. Didn't overhype it, didn't think I got to win this thing, and didn't feel like I think a lot of people think in a quick sport like auto racing that you have to be pedal to the floor and intense all the time and always running and out in front. Maybe your machinery allows you to be in front most of the race, but it's not always like that. You're going to be in the middle or behind a little bit sometimes, but that doesn't mean that you may not get eventually to the front. Anyway, it was a very relaxed way of looking at things. He even talked about a situation where he raced his most of his career. All of his Indy 500 wins were with Roger Penske, just like Joseph Newgarden, who's won the last couple of Indy 500s. Apparently, Roger Penske would give him a new contract. They used to not have incentives in their contract, and he says, "I don't really need these incentives in my contract, Roger. I'm going to give you my best all the time, and if to put incentives in there makes me go crazier racing, then it's not worth it." Is basically what he told him. And all of that stuff is just very counterintuitive. And you look at auto racing as an analogy to a lot of things that we chase after in this country. We can pursue those things calmly. We can talk to people about how we might be able to acquire them or make them better. We can pray about them. A lot of those things are good things, but keeping the even keel and keeping things in perspective always seemed to be a big thing for Rick Mears. And I was just so fascinated when, I heard him 30 years after the first time talking about that. And, he's grateful to be in such a Hall of Fame position now, but it it comes about in a different way than I think most of us are used to in this era of instant gratification and always chasing after things and realizing that in whatever conflict or competition or turmoil that we may sometimes have in our lives, that things usually somehow wind up working out for the good. And we can just be busy chasing all these things and being stressed about them, or we can just calmly keep things in perspective, have a good plan, good strategy, and calmly work toward them. And that's basically what he did in his racing career. And so I like I said, I don't necessarily want to direct you to Dale Jr.'s podcast, although he has a great podcast, but that interview would be worth quite a bit. Just in terms of my philosophy, things don't always work as we are conditioned to think they should work. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next show. And if you can think outside the box and you can do it in a productive, meaningful way, counterintuitive, as I said, then it's going to be well worth your time. And that's the point that I felt like I was touched and moved on right there. He also raced in a time when there was, I don't know, maybe this is my older age, but I think that there was a lot more names out there on the track with him. A lot of guys who raced for many years, the Foyts and the Andrettis, and some of them are still kind of around through sons and grandsons, but I don't know if the names are quite the same as they were. But anyway, by the way, I have been to Indy 500 once. I have actually been to the Speedway several times for several races, but the Indy 500 only once, and certainly that's a race that I think everybody should go for the spectacle at least once in their lives, because Dale Jr. said this, and a lot of other people have said this, but I mean, it's truly a one of a kind. Anyway, for this show today, I want to end with saying that I'm definitely, of course, continuing this podcast and continuing to work on it and evolve it as much as possible, as much as I have time. And I also have some ideas for some other novels and trying to get the one that I've written, try to get it out there and published. I don't know how much longer I may keep the actual Substack article site. I think of the three endeavors, the articles are the toughest ones to keep and maintain, or I should say come up with something and write something that makes cogent and interesting sense. I mean, the Substack is kind of more of a written podcast, if anything, but I don't quite have the immersion or the passion for that as I do for the other two things. So I may be doing away with that pretty soon. The alternative was maybe to do it once every 2 weeks, but we'll see how that goes. And I just wanted to give you a little update on that. But anyway, thank you for listening once again this week, joining me here in the forest and talking about something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. These kind of semi-philosophical ideas. But obviously, leave a comment if you feel so inclined. Hit subscribe. Please tell your friends and family. Trying to really grow this thing, and hope you're finding it entertaining, edifying, and sometimes maybe it's not as funny as I'd like it to be, or maybe I'm not swearing as much as I should. Shit. I just need to swear more, just like that. But anyway, we'll see you again next week. Take care. Talk to you later. Bye.